Hello and welcome into another edition of 8Sports Nightcap. We got a lot on the docket this week. A10 had their media day yesterday up in Washington, D.C., as VCU and Richmond took the stands, both their men's teams as well as their women's team. And then a crazy week of another weekend of college football with UVA and Virginia Tech both getting big wins, as well as Richmond. And then, of course, the Commanders just keep on rolling. Kind of like last week, we got a special guest on the show. My producer, Will Gonzalez, joins us today. He's helping out behind the scenes to help put this show together. He's got a little bit of a sports journalism background, from my understanding, and as a big basketball fan. Well, who are your favorite teams? Well, kind of give some people. Introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
Well, I have been covering VCU basketball and University of Richmond basketball here at WRIC for several years now. I went to VCU myself, and I'm a big VCU basketball fan, and so it's definitely something that I cover closely. Just a huge basketball fan in general, I would say. NBA, college, high school, just a big fan of the game, so I'm ready to talk about some
I'm probably
VCU.
going to have to lean on you some this year with, obviously I'm not – I'm from the area, but haven't been covering VCU or Richmond hoops before, so I'll probably have to lean on you some this year. Obviously, they've had a lot of success recently, and I'm really excited for the start of both of their seasons, which is really right around the corner. Where are you originally from, Will?
So I'm from Northern Virginia. I grew up watching Georgetown basketball.
Okay.
And so definitely grew up in a big sports watching family, and so been sort of a fan of basketball and all sports in general for pretty much my whole life.
There you go. Were your dad or parents a big? How'd you get into Georgetown?
Georgetown was kind of just the local college team in the DC area. Grew up a huge fan of Allen Iverson when he was on the 76ers and then later the Nuggets. And so I would say Georgetown just has the just the biggest legacy in the DMV when it comes to college basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. George Mason had some success up there as well. All right, so let's look at some of the breakdown from the A10 Media Day. VCU picked to win the conference. A little surprised by that, but when you look at the players they bring back, it kind of explains it. Last year they went 24-14, great season. They had a big game at the end of the season versus Richmond. Of course, Richmond would end up winning that game and would go on to win the regular season conference. Max Shulga earns first-team honors. No surprise there. Was incredible last year. 13.7 points a game. Shot 41% from three. Of course, he joined the head coach. Help me out here, Will.
Ryan Odom.
Ryan Odom, that's right. Yeah. Second year, Ryan Odom's getting ready for the season. He came from Utah State. He brought Shulga with him and had a lot of success last year. Joe Bamisile out of Virginia Tech. He gets second team All A10 honors after his great season last year, as well as Zeb Jackson, who was named to the defensive team honors. What's interesting when they were going through the media day yesterday was the amount of depth on the field or on the court we should see this upcoming season with VCU. They have 5 players with 5 years of experience of college basketball returning this year. The Rams return 65% of their production. They kick off their season against Bellarmine at home on November 4th, and then a couple of other notable non-conference games that they'll have before A10 play begins will be at Boston College, and then in their in-season tournament, they'll take on Seton Hall as well as the winner of Vanderbilt, Nevada. So that'll be pretty interesting to see. Last year, I did not get to see too much of VCU in action. Will, can you kind of take us through last season from the ups and the downs and what I should be able to expect to see this year when they kick off their season against Bellarmine on November 4th?
Yeah, so I would say last season was definitely a season of uncertainty is how I would describe it, with the new head coach, a lot of new players, and, of course, a lot of players who departed VCU to join the previous coach, who I will not mention right now out of respect for the current coaching staff and players. But there were a lot of players who left and not a lot of new players who came in, and so I think we weren't really sure how the team was going to fare. And I think the team exceeded everyone's expectations, and absolutely. We were 6 points away from us talking about could they potentially three-peat in the A10 conference.
Yeah, it's interesting from an outsider that, I've watched a lot of VCU basketball over my life being from Virginia, but I've never, had fine-tooth comb going through the season and whatnot. But I think one thing that sticks out about VCU, and it's, if you're from the area, if you're from around the country, you know this, that VCU has this culture of basketball that they've managed to have the success over like 7 coaches now, ever since Shaka, took them to the Final Four a few years ago. I mean, the culture is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely with the amount of new players that you have on a college team in any given year, the Rams' tenacity on defense still shows, and that sort of culture of havoc on defense is definitely
and I'm excited to see the Siegel Center. I've not been to a game before. I know that the Havoc Nation gets loud and proud for him, so I'm excited to check out the fan base as well.
Absolutely, it gets super loud in there, and Broad Street gets pretty chaotic on a game day. So if you, so I would say if you're making your way to campus on a game day, I would say definitely make arrangements and plan ahead.
All right, cool. Looking forward to that. All right, let's talk about a little Richmond Spiders basketball. The great story of the A-10 last year out of nowhere. They were picked to finish 11th in the conference last year. They end up having an incredible season. They went 15-3 in A-10 play and finished the season with a 23-10 record. Of course, Chris Mooney's been with the Spiders forever, it seems, and he gets Coach of the Year honors this past year for taking the Spiders to a regular season title, the first time that they have ever won a regular season title since they joined the A-10. And this year they get picked 7th in the conference, which in the grand scheme of things, a pretty good ranking for them, considering how much they lost last year. They only returned 1 starter from last year's championship winning team. They have 9 newcomers. That's the most that Mooney's has had to mold before the season begins. Ever since he's been at U of R, that's over 20 seasons now. A couple of their returners do include Delaney Hunt, Mike Walls, and their sharpshooter Jason Roshi. He returns as well. It'll be interesting to see what this Spiders team looks like with the amount of turnover that they've had from last year. It's a couple of notable games on their roster and non-conference plays. They have to go on the road to the jungle and play at Auburn, who will probably have a Final Four caliber team once again. That'll be an early season test to see, just how good this Richmond team is. And then they have to travel to Williamsburg to take on William & Mary, which is just always a great rivalry matchup between the Rams and the Tribe. As for the Gulf Coast Showcase, they have not announced which teams are playing in that in that end-season tournament, which is kind of interesting considering that it's like the season begins in less than a month. So we should hear who's going to be playing that end-season tournament here shortly. Like I said, I know you mentioned you went to VCU. What can you tell me maybe about the A-10 last year and what Richmond was able to do?
Yeah, I will say based on the University of Richmond's performance in the last several years, I was pretty surprised to see them all the way down at number 7. 3 years ago they were going to the NCAA tournament after a A-10 championship, and so and they had this they were tied for the best overall record last year, and so I'm a big VCU fan, so how I feel about the Spiders, put that aside, I was kind of surprised, and I do kind of see some disrespect against the Spiders and Coach Mooney. I mean, of course he brings a lot of stability to that team. I think he's been the head coach for longer than I've been alive, and I don't know. I think the Spiders deserve better than number 7.
Yeah, 7th was surprising. Now, with that said, Seth Greenberg was at A-10 Media Day yesterday to talk about the season. And what was interesting in that, what Greenberg had to say was he was saying that there could be 5 or 6 NCAA tournament bids this year, whereas last year, of course, the big surprise of the NCAA tournament was the fact that the A-10 only got their conference champion in with Duquesne, who was the 11th seed, and went on to win a game, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so for Greenberg to go in there and say that this is an improved conference, I think there's a possibility that this transfer portal has a lot to do with that a lot of these guys are looking for more playing time and the ability to be a star player, and I think that actually had a lot to do with the strength of the A-10 we'll see this year. And if VCU can end up winning that, it'll be pretty interesting. All right, well, let's turn our attention now to a little college football because that's some huge games taking place this past weekend. UVA moves to 4-1 under Tony Elliott with a big win over Boston College. 24-14 was the final in that one. Boston College went up 14-0 in this game. And UVA stormed back. Boston, something happened. I don't know exactly what happened, but the UVA defense stepped up. They were able to force 3 turnovers in the game. They held the Eagles to just 65 yards rushing, and Anthony Calandria had a pretty solid day at work. 179 yards and a touchdown. Kobe Pace kind of got to see his workload really improve. 19 carries, 83 yards, and what was a really good game. Malachi Fields actually showed up and had a great game in this as well. And I think the big surprise of the ACC right now is UVA. And I know we've talked about it on this show a lot over the past couple of weeks, that UVA, of course, last year finished the season 3-9. But part of the reason they were 3-9 was because they lost so many one-score games, and that's the opposite this season. UVA has been able to be on the winning side of those conversations, and to go from a bottom-dwelling ACC team that I don't think would have been favorites to win 4 games this season. I'm sure their over-under was around 5, and they're already 4-1. Calandria is playing great. Tony Elliott has the guys playing with confidence. The only thing you would like to see is that the fan support be there a little bit for UVA. I was kind of disappointed to see the amount of fans at Scott Stadium being 3-1, welcoming a good Boston College team to town. Despite the fact that it wasn't crowded in the fourth quarter, the UVA Cavaliers come away with the win. The big storyline, 2-0 in ACC play, and next week they take on a Louisville team that is 3-2. Louisville this past week lost to SMU, who's starting to look like a favorite to maybe compete for an ACC championship in their first year in the conference, kind of like Virginia Tech did back in 2004. The Cardinals 3-2 in this one, and of course I'll be on the sidelines for the game this weekend as Richmond is on the road, and Virginia Tech has a bye week. So we'll have full coverage from UVA's matchup against Louisville this Saturday on 8 News. And after that game, head coach Tony Elliott had this to say following the big win that moved the Cavs to 4-1 on the season.
Who we can be as a team.
Proud of the guys overall because they accepted the challenge. You know, we knew that BC was going to come in here and they were going to try and start fast, and they did. And you know, we allowed some of it with just some uncharacteristic mistakes, but they found a way to persevere through it.
Found a way to persevere as well as the Cavs move to 4-1. They take on Louisville, as mentioned. All right, let's talk a little Virginia Tech football because they are back in the win column. They go on the road to Palo Alto. I'm saying that wrong. Say it for me, Will.
Palo Alto.
There you go. Thank you. Get a big win over Stanford, 31-7, and this was the team that I think all ACC media members and fans alike kind of thought Virginia Tech was going to be this year, a team that can move the ball in offense and play really good defense. That was the expectations coming into the season, and it's something that nobody had seen all year long. Maybe against last week versus Miami, we saw it a little bit. But Drones goes on the road, goes 14 for 19, 201 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, rushed for another score. Tootin had another great day, really turning into that bell cow type back for Virginia Tech, 73 yards on the ground and a score. Daquan Felton had a big receiving touchdown as well. He, of course, was the receiver that didn't catch a touchdown against Miami, so to see him bounce back with a big win was impressive. That Hokie defense kind of bounced around, was all over the place, forcing turnovers on defense. And this was the team that Virginia Tech fans have been expecting to see all season. The lack of, enjoyment. It almost seemed like watching Virginia Tech play. They played so tight and so like they were so scared to make a mistake, and you kind of saw them cut loose a little bit, celebrate a little bit in front of what was an empty Stanford Stadium, as the Cardinal has really fallen off over the past few seasons. Stanford probably the worst team in the conference right now, so you wanted a big win like this if you're Virginia Tech. And they get it. First time they played in San Francisco since the 2002 San Francisco Bowl, or around Northern California, I should say. But a big win for the Hokies, much needed. They move to 3-3 on the season now and get a much needed bye week before they'll host BC on Thursday Night Football inside Lane Stadium next week. So they got about 12 days to prepare for the Eagles, who are coming to town, who also have a bye week after they, of course, lost to UVA last week. So it'll be interesting to see if Virginia Tech can keep it rolling. You look at the rest of the conference for Virginia Tech, and it's a winnable lineup here. Let's pull it up for you. The toughest game left on their schedule, of course, is the Clemson game. That's going to be at home. That's in the first week of November. Trying to find my browser for you. Here you go. And as you can see here, they got Boston College at home. They got Georgia Tech at home. They go on the road to play Syracuse, a team that's struggling. And then really the only tough matchup left is Clemson. They should be able to take care of Duke on the road in Durham. And then the November 30th matchup against UVA. And if UVA keeps playing like they're playing, that could determine whether or not the Cavaliers get into the college football, or rather the ACC championship with the way the Cavs are playing. Let's look at what Virginia actually has left on their schedule, because I have not looked at it myself. Of course, they got to play that Clemson team. Their matchup's a little tougher. They have to play SMU, Pittsburgh, a UNC team that's struggling, and, of course, Notre Dame, but that is not actually technically an ACC matchup. So interesting point there. Virginia Tech has the ability to I don't want to say win out, but they should be favorites in every matchup. And, of course, their hardest games against Clemson, and that'll be at home. And, Clemson kind of struggled against Florida State, who's turning into, kind of the laughingstock of the ACC this year. But this is what head coach Brent Pry had to say following the Hokies' big win at Stanford.
Well-rounded effort against a good team at their place after a tough loss. I asked the guys to, we need to come prove who the team we are, how we can be, who we can be as a team. And I thought we took a big step that way today.
Yeah, Hokies get back in the win column. Impressive win. As I know I've mentioned it a couple of times now, but I think that was the team that I think fans were expecting to see this year, and they get that win on the road. All right, how about we talk a little NFL football? The Commanders take care of business against the Browns. They win it 34-13. Jaden Daniels is the talk of the NFL. He's been incredible this season, 238 yards passing, a score, and as well as an interception. Rushed for 82 yards in this game as well. Brian Robinson had 2 scores. I think McNichols scored as well for Washington, and Terry McLaurin was the best receiver, 112 yards for him. The defense impressed this time, 212 yards of total offense they held the Browns to, and they went 1 for 13 on third down, which is just incredible. I'll bring Will in to talk a little Commanders football. You're from the D.C. area. Did you grow up watching the Skins, or are you a Commanders fan?
Well, to be honest, I will say the Jaden Daniel era with the Commanders has been, I would say, a breath of fresh air for me, having grown up watching the Commanders. I would say I grew up watching them, but I would definitely not describe myself as a Commanders fan. I would definitely say growing up watching the Commanders was a little bit frustrating. Kind of seemed like the home games kind of feel like more like home games for the other team. Yeah. Sort of experiences of that nature, and so. It's been really exciting to see how strong they've. It's
kind of interesting how many moves they made this offseason. Of course, they have the new ownership, and they bring in a new head coach. They bring in new coordinators. They brought in a couple of pieces on defense. They brought in a couple of, I think I'm could be line. I'm pretty sure they brought in some offensive linemen, and of course a couple of different receiver options as well. It's been interesting to see a buy-in, right? It wasn't just, let's tinker with this and that and try to go 500. It was like, let's put these resources in this quarterback. And I think it's safe to say he's been the talk of the NFL and, by far the most impressive rookie this season.
Absolutely. Definitely in comparison to the rest of the rookies that we've been seeing, is definitely really, really interesting. I don't know if this is 100% true, but I read a tweet that said that he gets to the practice facility at 4 every morning.
That's too early for me.
Yeah, apparently Bobby Wagner said that by the time he gets to the practice facility every day, Jaden has already finished his lifting and film for the day. And I know Bobby Wagner's known as being a super hardworking guy, so pretty remarkable.
The buy-in's got to have been there. I mean, the Commanders look like the best team in the NFC. NFC East, the Cowboys obviously kind of didn't look great versus the Steelers this past week, and they have the ability to I think, win the division, and it's been impressive to say the least. And I know it's been a breath of fresh air, kind of like you were just saying, for these Commanders fans that have watched all of these teams kind of be a piece away, right? That's been the case for so long, other than the one flash in the pan with Robert Griffin III back in 2012. But Commanders, they are looking impressive. They get another win, but this week, man, it's going to be we're going to find out just how good this team is as they head to just down the road to Baltimore to take on the Ravens on Sunday at 1 o'clock. We'll find out then and there just how good the Commanders are. I think obviously they've taken control of what has been a pretty easy start to the season. Of course, they beat the brakes off of the Cardinals 42-14. They beat a good Bengals team who's starting to kind of find their footing week 2. And, of course, they had that weird game against the Giants that they won 21-18 with 7 field goals. But, I mean, they're just rolling. And the rest of their – I think we talked about it last week on the show a little bit. But this game against the Ravens, probably the hardest game left on their schedule. I mean, they have the Panthers next week. Granted, this Andy Dalton's Panthers team is pretty good. Then we have the rookie quarterback showdown with the Bears and Commanders. I mean, obviously, the division's kind of up in the air with no one really knowing how good the Cowboys or Eagles are. But their non-division games, fare for them pretty good. But that's just kind of what happens in the NFL if you have a bad season the year prior. But pretty interesting stuff. Before we go, I would like to talk a little bit high school football and then circle back with maybe some storylines with Will real quick. But here's a look at this week's Game of the Week poll. It's leaning one way, Glen Allen versus Varina. These two teams I think they have a chance to make 2 deep playoff runs. Glen Allen undefeated on the season. Varina only has 1 loss this year. It's at Varina, so it'll be a tough matchup for Glen Allen to go on the road. But the VHSL released their top 20 teams today, and Glen Allen was at top of this Class 6A region. So it'll be pretty interesting to see that game. Some other games to keep an eye out on, I think, are Matoka, Thomas Dale Matoka, I think, is the area's best team. They have 4 guys probably going to play Power 4 football, which is insane to say. Highland Springs plays at Henrico, another important one. That's on Thursday night. Deep Run heads to J.R. Tucker on a Thursday night. A couple other interesting matchups. Mills Godwin at home versus Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson undefeated. They have to play a Class 5 team, so they'll get a lot of points if they can pull off that win on the road against Mills Godwin. Of course, we're going to have another great show this upcoming weekend. Another game I do want to give a shout out to, Class 1A game. Not often we get to talk Class 1, but Rappahannock 5-0 on the season, travels to Essex 5-0. So that'll be fun to see which one of those teams comes out on top for our Class 1 teams. Not often we get to spotlight one of those, but I think this week we definitely are, as 2 undefeated teams battle it out. That should be a lot of fun. All right, that's going to just about wrap up the show here. Thanks so much for Will for joining me. Anything else you'd like to add from storylines from this week? I'm trying to think of what happened yesterday with the Monday night game was pretty good with Travis Kelce throwing the ball all over the place and the big man interception. But
I will say I do not follow the Chiefs, but I did see that interception on Instagram.
Gotta love a big man running down the field.
Absolutely.
And in the world of college football, I think we got to talk a little. Just mention the fact that Miami remains undefeated. They've now had 2 scares in a row. Of course, they beat Virginia Tech on that controversial final play, and then there was a controversial targeting non-call in that game. And I don't know if I agree with it being controversial. I think a lot of people I saw on X talking about how it's rigged to Miami, blah, blah, blah. 10 years ago, they're never going to make that call regardless. At the end of the day, you got to win the game. And Cal had the biggest blunder of the season. Yes, I'm sure they're frustrated with how it was officiated. But at the end of the day, Miami came back and scored 20-some points in the fourth quarter to come back and win that game. And the world of the ACC football just keeps getting crazier. SMU looks really good this year. It's going to be hard for any team to knock them off. I'm thinking it's going to look like a Miami and SMU at the end of the year. But UVA, if they can pull off a couple of big wins, they have the opportunity to do it too, which is crazy to say after the way last season ended. All right, but anyway, that's going to wrap things up here for 8Sports Nightcap. Thanks so much for tuning in on Facebook, on YouTube, on our website. We do this each week at 6:45 on Tuesdays, where we just talk a little ball, have a little fun. Thanks so much for Will Gonzalez for helping us put the show together today and adding some commentary as well. All right, that'll wrap up things here. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you tonight at 11.